What is up, YouTube? That's here, bringing you guys an extra special video. Today, we are going to be discussing the elephant in the room as far as Let's Go singles battles are concerned. Today, we are going to be talking about the stealth rock situation. Do you guys like stealth rocks? Do you hate stealth rocks? I'm going to be saying my opinion on the whole matter. A lot of people say that stealth rocks are like a really big problem in the game because you can't get rid of them. So before we really hop into that and I give you guys 4 ways in which you can actually deal with stealth rocks and make them not as big of an issue in your own games, we're going to talk about what stealth rocks does. We're going to give a little bit of a history lesson. So stealth rocks, for example, I'm going to be reading it from the little TM bag. It's going to say, the user lays a trap of levitating stones around the opposing team. The trap hurts the opposing Pokemon that switch into battle. So a lot of you guys know what Stealth Rocks does. It's going to create like an invisible little trap or hazard that your opponent, every single time they switch into the Stealth Rocks, they're going to take a bit of damage. Now, this does not work if they're already active. Like if they have a Pokemon on the board and you use Stealth Rocks, this is not going to deal any damage to them. This only happens every single time they either switch a Pokemon out and send one back in. Upon sending one back in, they're going to take damage. Or if like you KO one of their Pokemon and then they have to send one in. So only when things come into battle do they take the Stealth Rocks damage. The next thing we're going to talk about is how much damage does it actually deal. It actually deals 12.5% to every single Pokemon. You may think that's not really that important, but you know, this is a little bit off topic, it's a little bit more advanced, but a lot of Pokemon, since you can't use like Eevee training and like there's no items to optimize how much damage you can deal, a lot of Pokemon like get within KO potential range after taking Stealth Rocks, and you'd be really surprised, you know, how many KOs you can pick up after Stealth Rocks. But that's something that's a completely off-topic thing. Anyways, so yeah, they take 12.5%, which really does matter. And it's not just that they take 12.5%; they take 12.5% of rock type damage. Now, this isn't spikes. This isn't toxic spikes. Those were like normal and poison-based moves. This is rock type damage, and so with it being rock type damage, if it's super effective against something that's weak against rock type, you know, like flying types, ice types, fire types, and bug types, you know, they're going to take double damage. So, like, let's say you got an Arcanine, for example. Pokemon that a lot of people would love to use, well, it has a 50%, like, it has a double weakness to Stealth Rock, so it takes 25% every single time you want to switch it in. And Arcanine's a Pokemon who's great at switching in and mitigating and soaking damage. It's not that great if you have to take 25% of your health pool every single time you switch in. And it gets even worse, right? It gets even worse. You know, if you have something like a Charizard or an Articuno, you know, those take 50% damage from Stealth Rocks. Those Pokemon are 4 times weak to rock attacks. So, you know, every single time you want to switch in an Articuno or a Charizard, or like a Moltres or something, they take 50% of their health. It's so hard to use those Pokemon competitively. You're just trapped. You feel trapped, and you don't know what to do because, you know, the problem a lot of people would say with Stealth Rocks in this format is that you can't get rid of them. If we think to other generations, I don't know how many of you guys have played other generations of Pokemon, but there used to be moves like Rapid Spin and Defog, and the effect of those moves would be, if your opponent had any hazards on the board, like Stealth Rocks or Spikes or Toxic Spikes, you know, making contact with Rapid Spin or using a move like Defog would get rid of them. It would clear the board. And, you know, that was what a lot of people use to counter these Stealth Rocks Pokemon, because hazards are a very important part of the competitive metagame. Believe it or not, switching is incredibly important, and if you can't switch, sometimes you just have to stay in and lose a Pokemon. Just because you can't switch in and take that Stealth Rocks damage, then you just lose that Pokemon. It's a lot smarter more often just to stay in, lose a Pokemon, then bring something in on top of it. And so, a lot of people think that Stealth Rocks in this game, because you can't get rid of them because of no Rapid Spin, you know, it creates an unhealthy metagame of, like, oppression. And, you know, like, you just gotta get your rocks up fast, and if you get your rocks up, you're gonna win the game. And so, I want to talk about how that's not really true, and I'm gonna give you guys 4 ways that you guys can deal with Stealth Rocks, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll see Stealth Rocks in the same light that I see it. Do I think Stealth Rocks are really good? Yeah, they're pretty good, but if you use my ways and use the same mindset that I have, hopefully you'll, you know, be able to get around that. So, the first way, let's talk about Stealth Rocks users, right? Obviously, the biggest problem Stealth Rocks user is going to be Aerodactyl. When we're talking about Stealth Rocks in general, as far as Stealth Rocks users go, things that are using Stealth Rocks for the remainder of this video, we're going to be talking mostly about Aerodactyl, because I would feel that like Stealth Rock's tier list Pokemon would be something like Aerodactyl, then Mew, and then like the ground and rock types, you know, like Rhydon, Nidoking, Dugtrio, Golem, what have you. Even like Pinsir gets Stealth Rocks, that's hilarious, right? But yeah, so Aerodactyl, 130 base speed. Let's talk about the things that can actually even outspeed a Mega Aerodactyl. You got like Mega Alakazam, you got like Mewtwo's, I guess. But you got Mega Alakazam, Mewtwo's, Mega Gengar can speed type, Jolteon, Electrode. Not many Pokemon even can outspeed that Pokemon. So if you lead with Aerodactyl and you click your cruise control for cool Stealth Rocks button, 90% of the time you're going to be able to get your Stealth Rocks up. And I'm going to be talking about why, because that's so good in most people's eyes, you're going to be able to use that to your advantage. So, you know, let's talk about some stuff. Let's actually go into the game, and we're going to talk about, I guess I didn't really have to go into the game, but we're going to talk about some Pokemon that I use to deal with Stealth Rocks. So, the first way to beat Stealth Rocks users, the very first, easiest way to beat Stealth Rocks users is to use something like an Electrode. I actually would recommend an Electrode for this, because Electrode, remember how I said Aerodactyl had a 130 base speed? Electrode has 150, and so they'd have to Mega Evolve with the Aerodactyl just to get a chance to speed tie you, just to get a chance to potentially set up the rocks. And if they're going to go all in like that just to set up a rocks, they're not players that, like, you... No one's going to do that, and even if they did, they have to like win like 5 coin flips just to be able to do that. No one's going to do that, and if they do, you're going to win the game because they play way too risky. So yeah, you can taunt the Stealth Rocks user, guys. The target is taunted into a rage that allows the use of only attacking moves. So like anything like Stealth Rocks or Toxic or Thunder Wave or anything like that, those moves can't be used. They only can use moves that are attacking moves. So like, let's say you're an Aerodactyl, you're using Stealth Rocks, I'm the Electrode using Taunt. If I use Taunt, it's going to effectively skip your turn. It's going to say the opposing Aerodactyl could not use Stealth Rocks because of Taunt. And then next turn, it's going to be able to use attacking moves like Rock Slide and Earthquake. So you may be thinking, like, you say it's easy, but what happens if the Aerodactyl just Earthquakes you? Well, Jolly Aerodactyls, which 90% of the Aerodactyls need to be able to be used competitively, Earthquake doesn't one-shot Dugtrio. Everyone says that it does. It's like, what if you eat an Earthquake? That's the #1 comment every single time I have to say this. What if you eat Earthquake? First of all, you live. Like, that's a win-win. You're not using rocks, and you live. Sign me up. I'll take that every day. And let's say they get a crit, or let's say they Mega Evolve, or let's say they're using, you know, one of those other Stealth Rocks users, like a Rhydon, or a Nidoking, for example, or a Dugtrio, that obviously your moveset here doesn't work against. If you taunt them, and they decide not to go for Stealth Rocks because they know the taunt's coming, and they go for an Earthquake, well, let's talk about the board position that you now have yourself in. Sure, you're a Pokemon down, but do they have their rocks up? Yes or no? The answer is no. And this lead right here with the Electrode here is allowing you the luxury to have a team that is incredibly weak to Stealth Rocks. Your team could be like, you know, 2 flying types, a Charizard, and a Parasect, and they're not going to get their rocks up. And if they can't get their rocks up, you are eventually going to roll them. And they're going to go way out of their way to get their rocks up. 90% of the time, what's going to happen is, because they can't get their rocks up, you're going to be able to send out your Pokemon, and you're going to be able to get your rocks up, because they can't taunt you back. They're taunted. They can't put their rocks up against you. They're still taunted. They're still taunted for 3 turns. That's how long taunt lasts 3 turns. And you're going to be able to get a setup move off. You're going to be able to get Swords Dances. You're going to be able to get, you're going to be able to force a switch, get your own rocks, hit Sleep Powders. The ability to sacrifice Electrode to deny your opponent from setting up is going to let you win the game. And once you realize that, you're going to be really good. Now, it's totally possible, you know, that they'll switch away, switch to something to get some damage, and be able to come back out with that same Rock Slayer at a much later point in the game and reapply Stealth Rocks. And it's on you as a player to realize the safe switches they have in for their 1 to 2 Stealth Rocks users and be able to pin them every single time they do it. You still have to outplay your opponent, but one thing is 100% certain. If you lead with the Electrode, and they don't Mega Evolve with Aerodactyl and Speed Tie you, you are going to be able to deny rocks, and that is huge for the whole team building process. A lot of times I see people say, oh, I can't use that Pokemon, I already have 1 weakness to Stealth Rocks, I already have 2 weaknesses to Stealth Rocks, my team's too weak to rocks. That is not true. It is not true. Taunt stops Stealth Rocks. You heard it here first. It's pretty good. You can use this against all the Stealth Rocks users. The other way to KO Stealth Rocks users, or the other way to deal with Stealth Rocks users. We're not gonna, well, yeah, let's talk about this one now. You can just KO the freaking Stealth Rocks user. You could just KO them. you can just one-shot them. Let's take Aerodactyl, for example. You know, Electro Thunder can crit KO an Aerodactyl. A Jolteon Thunderbolt will KO an Aerodactyl. You could lead something like a Mega Alakazam, pop a Psychic, crit the Aerodactyl. Like I'm saying, Aerodactyl's the main threat, but let's talk about some of the slower ones. Like if your opponent leads like a Nidoking or a Nidoqueen, for example, and you were to bust out something like a Starmie, for example, and they can't set up their rocks. They're just gonna get Hydro Bump. They're just gonna get Psychicked. Let's talk about like the other rocks users. You got Mew. Mew's totally pinnable by stuff like Mega Gengar. What you have to do is you have to be able to analyze. The first thing you do in every single team preview is the first thing you do is, when I get into the game, what can use Stealth Rocks? And what can I then lead with that can not only pin that Stealth Rocks user and stop that Stealth Rocks user from using Stealth Rocks through the use of something like Taunt, or through the use of like a one-hit KO mechanic that can KO them before they even get it off. And then what can I also do while doing that makes me safe from like a different Pokemon on their team? So Starmie's a really good lead, for example, because Starmie can like Thunder Wave most threats. Starmie can KO every single Stealth Rocks user, barring Pinsir. I think it can't KO Mew either, but like you can kind of deal with Mew with Starmie. Like with Starmie, like I'd rather just Thunder Wave the Mew, let him get his rocks up and be like, LOL, it's fine. Mew's a little bit of a problem, but that's about it. You wouldn't really lead Starmie versus Mew, but that's a different story. So yeah, you can KO them. These Pokemon have health pools. You don't need to lead your Stealth Rocks user into their Stealth Rocks user and both you guys just trade rocks. Never do that. Only villains do that. That's not the play. Like seriously, never just trade rocks with your opponent. Always punish them for setting up Stealth Rocks and then use Stealth Rocks when it is available for you. Have you ever seen me just trade rocks with an opponent? Ever. In any format. Going back the past like 10 years of gameplay. You haven't. I'm never going to do that. I'm always going to punish you for doing it, get a better board state, stabilize my field position, and then if I need to use Stealth Rocks later, I'll do that. But I'm not just going to trade rocks with you. There's no reason to. I can just win instead. So yeah, you can taunt them, you can KO them. Another option is, like let's say, you know, you don't want to use Aerodactyl, or you don't want to use a fast, you want to use a bulk your team, because right now what you're saying is, those are all great answers, but I don't want to run Electrode. I don't want to run Starmie. I don't want to use Alakazam. And you don't have to. There are more options. You can still run these teams that are very weak to Stealth Rocks, to an extent, and still deal with it. Another option is, like, let's say they're leading with something like, you know, let's run the whole list. Aerodactyl, you got Mew, and you got all the ground types and rock types. Kingler beats all those, and you'd be thinking, like, how does Kingler beat that? Well, against an Aerodactyl, for example, you can set up an agility if you want to be very greedy, or you can just go for a Crab Hammer. Just one-shot the Aerodactyl. He's going to use Stealth Rocks, you're going to use Crab Hammer. Now, let's talk about the board position and what that actually means for the rest of the game. Did he get Stealth Rocks up against you? Yes. But he's now down a Pokemon. He's playing a 5v6. And you have a dominant board state if you went for the agility with Kingler. Like, so first turn he would go, like, the main reason why I don't really like the agility play is they can switch out the Aerodactyl to save it, which is why I would rather just KO it. But yeah, like, let's say you went for the Crab Hammer, just KO'd it. Let's talk about what them losing their Aerodactyl means to the team. So let's say you have a Pokemon like Arcanine, like Charizard, like Zapdos. Those are Pokemon that are, like, weak to rocks damage. And if you just take out the Aerodactyl, sure, you're going to take 25% every single time you switch in and take that Stealth Rocks damage, but you never have to worry about fighting an Aerodactyl. An Aerodactyl, the Pokemon itself, is worth much more than just Stealth Rocks. When people lead their Aerodactyls and just fodder it for Stealth Rocks, or they lead their Golem and just try and fodder it for rocks, or Rhydon, or Nidoking, or Nidoqueen, when they fodder their lead for Stealth Rocks, take that as a win. That's a win. You're going to win that game. Think about it. Let's think about it like this. If your opponent leads a Nidoqueen, and, you know, you lead like a Kingler, first of all, you're going to outspeed them. But let's use a different example. If they lead something, you know, that's a little bit faster, maybe Nidoking, for example, and they get up Stealth Rocks and you one-shot them with a Crab Hammer. Now, them losing that Nidoking means they're losing their Poison Resist, and they're losing their Electric Resist. So that means if you have any Electric types, like Zapdos, like literally anything that would know an Electric attack, you no longer have to fear using said Electric attack. You don't have to worry about, like, man, I don't want to use this Thunderbolt. Maybe they're going to switch him with a Ground type, and that you know, state of mind, that peace of mind, the luxury you get from them being down that Pokemon, it's eventually going to snowball. It's the start of the snowball. They're losing their types that they can switch into defensively. Losing an Aerodactyl isn't just losing something that's fast. It's losing your ground resist. Like, Aerodactyl resists ground type Pokemon, or ground attacks. It nullifies them because it's a flying type. You're losing that. by not having your Aerodactyl, that means my Earthquakes are going to be hitting hard and fast, and your flying type, you know, most teams only have like 1 or 2 flying types because Stealth Rocks is so prevalent. You probably don't have any more, and that means I can always just click that EQ button and deal massive damage against almost any one of your Pokemon. And that's all because you decided to fodder everything for Stealth Rocks. So that's the third option. Remember, the first option is Taunt, second option is KO, and the third option is let it happen and just win the game for it. You don't even have to like punish him with the Crab Hammer. Like sometimes, you know, like you've seen me do this in videos. They lead Aerodactyl and I lead Omastar, and they go Stealth Rocks and I go Shell Smash, and they're like, oh shit, I need an Earthquake. They Earthquake, but it's too late now, and I Shell Smash again, I kill 6 of their Pokemon. You know, let them do it. Get a better board state. Set up. Use Sleep Powder. Like, win the game because they use rocks. Use the fact that they want to set up against them and punish them for not respecting your leads. So, the fourth option, it's actually the easiest option. It's actually the easiest of all the options. You don't have to have Taunt. You don't have to, you know, have something faster that can KO. You don't have to, you know, have something that can even punish them. Just make a team that's not weak to Stealth Rocks. You may be thinking, oh, it's impossible. I don't want to be limited that in my team building. It's not impossible. I say when I build teams, if you look at any of my teams, they rarely ever have more than 2 Pokemon that are weak to rocks. And if I have more Pokemon that are weak to rocks, they're Pokemon that can full heal, like Zapdos, for example. Sure, it's weak to rocks, but it gets Roost. Parasect, for example, it's weak to rocks, but like, you know that Pokemon's going to be able to, like, subseed its way back up to full. So, for example, like, you know, you can, or a Pokemon like Gyarados, for example. Gyarados, for example, is a great Pokemon, especially at pinning the rocks users. But, like, when it Mega Evolves, it loses its flying typing, which means it's not weak to rocks. Pokemon can just take Stealth Rocks damage all day. It's not important. It's only 12%. You can also use other Pokemon that take reduced damage from Stealth Rock. Like Groudon takes not very effective damage from Rock because it's a ground type. You know, you can definitely try working that stuff in. You could do some Steel type, stuff like that. Pokemon that take reduced damage from Stealth Rock or just not very effective damage from Stealth Rock. A lot of these times, your opponent's going to be like, they're going to leave their Aerodactyl and they're going to go for like a Stealth Rock. And then I'm going to be like, okay, that's fine. But like my team, I have like a bunch of water Pokemon or like I have a bunch of grass types. It's like, yeah, I'll take that 12% all day. Most of my Pokemon can probably heal themselves up just a little bit anyways. So it's not as easier said than done, but if you look at a lot of my videos, look like most of my team building videos or any VODs or any highlights I have on this channel, a lot of my teams aren't really weak to Stealth Rocks, and the couple that are, you know, this isn't necessarily like a 5th way to beat Stealth Rocks, because I've generally talked about it, but you can have a team that has like 5 Pokemon that just take normal or reduced damage from Stealth Rocks, and then 1 Pokemon that is just completely so weak to Stealth Rocks that it's going to bait your opponent into leading with it every time. You've seen me talk about this before with my Mega Gengar team. You know, I have a team that's like Gengar, Nidoking, and like Kingler and stuff like that, and then like out of nowhere I just have an Articuno, and it's right in the middle of the team. And so 90% of the time my opponents are going to lead Aerodactyl, and they're going to be like, I'm going to use Rock Slide or I'm going to use Stealth Rocks. And so when I leave with my Kingler to counter that, I just win the game. And you're thinking like, that's not going to happen every time. It's going to happen every time. And if they switch it to Aerodactyl, well, who wants to switch in on a Kingler Crab Hammer? Nobody. Ain't nobody want to switch in on a Kingler Crab Hammer. And even if they have stuff that can punish the Kingler, let's say they expect me to expect them to do that. Like, let's say they decide to leave with Zapdos because they know I'm going to punish the lead. They know they can already read me. They're 1 step ahead. All it takes from my board state is a ground type. And so I can just switch into my ground type, and then whose court is the ball in? So like, let's say I'm expecting them to move with Aerodactyl, so I leave with Kingler. They decide not to leave with Aerodactyl, they leave with Zapdos. So I have Kingler for Zapdos. I hard switch out my Kingler for any freaking ground type. Sandslash, Nidoking, Dugtrio, or literally anything. Anything. There's so many. There's just, every team should have one. It's not my fault. You should have one. Anyways, so I've switched in this ground type, block Thunderbolt. So now the Zapdos, it can go for a Toxic, it can go for a U-turn, it can go for a Drill Peck. I'm getting my rocks up that turn. That's free rocks. That's counter rocks. Just through correct use of game mechanics, analyzing the team preview. Stealth Rocks are not unbeatable because you can't get rid of them. Stealth Rocks are very oppressive, but I've just listed a bunch of ways to deal with them. I personally think if you guys are going to be using this in your own games, the best time to set up Stealth Rocks is like that mid-game, when you can get a free turn of Stealth Rocks. Use it when your opponent takes one sloppy turn or they can't punish you. Switch in, mitigate some damage, either force a switch or, you know, make a matchup where they can't really do anything and they can't do more than like 20 or 30% to you with a move, and just go for a free stealth rocks. That's the best time. And then once the meta gets to a point where, you know, people realize they shouldn't just be suicide leading with their stealth rocks users, yeah, then if we get to that point, you know, stealth rocks might start to become a problem because you can't just leave with Aerodactyl, or sorry, you can't just leave with a Electro to punish it anymore. Once we get to that point, it might start to become a problem. But if you look at Pokemon throughout the course of like the past 10 years, as long as stealth rocks have been a move, we still haven't hit that point. Everyone always leaves with their stealth rocks users. So I feel that, again, in like summarization, do I think stealth rocks really good? Yeah, I think it's really good, but it's definitely not unbeatable. I just listed a bunch of ways that not only can you like deal with it, but I gave you a bunch of strategies to help you win the game if they decide to be so one-dimensional in their playstyle. Do I recommend using Pokemon like Aerodactyl or like Electrode in your teams? Yeah, but you guys have watched my content long enough to know that you don't really have to, and even if you have a weakness to Stealth Rocks, it doesn't necessarily make a Pokemon unplayable because every single Pokemon's usable. It all depends on how you use it and how you team build. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about for this video. I probably could have went so much more in depth, but I just wanted to give you guys a few like examples of ways that I like to deal with Stealth Rocks, and you know, hopefully you guys like this sort of content. If you do like this sort of content, if you did like the video, please let me know in the comments below what you thought of it, and if you want to see more videos just talking about just general game mechanics and stuff like that in the future. I really look forward to reading your guys' contents each and every morning. It brightens up my day. I make some coffee and I read some comments, and generally makes my life very wonderful. So guys, thank you for watching. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.